on our Wisdom Wednesdays. Today, we have three important invites from Solutions Q, and we are very excited to have you here, guys. We're going to talk about cybersecurity. We have a lot of questions for you and discussions, and thank you for joining. We're going to give it probably one more minute before we start, and then we're just going to go ahead and invite you to see us. Also, we are live streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So if you're on those platforms, please watch us from there, and then we're going to start soon. Stay tuned. We're just going to start with our amazing people. Okay, guys, thank you for the people who are joining. And I see some people seeing us, watching us from LinkedIn. So thank you so much for joining today. Let's just get started with our webinar. We have here Mike Batistella, President and CTO of Solutions Q, Joe Vigorito, Vice President and DVRO, and Shannon Conley, Cybersecurity Team Leader from Solutions Q. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. From our side, we have Zia Mohi, our COO, and Gavi, our Business Development Leader from CTI. Thank you for joining, and let's just start about talking about cybersecurity. Mike, I want to start with you, obviously, and I want to ask you, and obviously the team from Solutions Q, could you actually share the story behind Solutions Q, how it evolved into a leading company in cybersecurity?
Sure, I'd love to share that story. But first, I just say thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. Always enjoy being part of programs like this. And, we've got a lot of craziness going on in our world out there from a cybersecurity perspective. So you allowing us to participate helps get the word out, and we're really appreciative of that. So, if I really go through the story, I'd have to take you back about 30 years. So my wife and I were working at Hewlett Packard together, and we were both instructors. So we taught for Hewlett Packard for 10 years. And in that time span, we wrote and delivered many courses around the Unix platform. She really focused in more of the software development area. I focused more in the infrastructure management. So training became a really important part of what we did. The story's not spectacular. We started a family, and she was the mom that wanted to be bringing the kids to school, dropping them off, working during the day, picking them up, and then be home with the kids and whatnot. So she launched a business called Technically Speaking. So it was really technical writing, course development. We were taking the things that we were good at and whatnot. I went off to a small consulting company. They asked me to grow a practice around the HP software, kind of the area I specialized in. So did that for 8 years, director of enterprise management, grew a national program, lots of awards and recognition. And what I realized during that phase is remained very technical, but also got very involved in the business side of things and really enjoyed that. So we launched the business in 2003. Trisha launched it. My wife, Trisha, launched it in 2003. By January of 2004, I joined her. So she really became the back office of the company, really doing the contracts and payroll and HR and all those kinds of things. And really, we took on the IT infrastructure management, cybersecurity, the service desk, and it really grew from there. So we finished up in July. We finished up our 21st year. We're now in our 22nd year. And the interesting thing is training has always been part of what we've been involved in. So officially, we're not a training company, but we do a lot of training. So we are practitioners. We're out doing what we preach, but we always add that training component into it. And more we're being asked to be involved in training programs and helping organizations get stronger, better, more efficient in their cyber programs. So that's kind of how it started in a nutshell. There's probably a lot more I could go into on that one, but that's how we got started.
Awesome. No, and that's very impressive. So thank you so much for sharing that story. And now to the other members of the team, of course, I want to ask you why cybersecurity and why so important nowadays?
I'll jump in and then I'll pass it over to Shannon. Aleja. Yeah, so the bottom line is cybersecurity is pervasive in every single facet of business. Business fails to operate where the transaction doesn't get processed, where people can't log in, where people's information all of a sudden disappears off of the system that they're working on because it's now encrypted and they don't have the ability to decrypt it and read it. So if you think about it, cybersecurity becomes an enabler, and that's where cyber has sort of maybe wavered or failed over the last 20 years because it hasn't always fulfilled that mission of being an enabler. We're starting to see that change, right? There's more of a focus on the business side of cyber. I think chief execs and board members are now starting to appreciate the value of a very strong cybersecurity program much more than perhaps they did in the early 2000s and maybe all the way up to about the time that COVID began. So I think we're definitely seeing a shift in mindset. Investment in cyber continues to increase on a year over year basis. We still have a skills shortage, right? We're sitting there with 3.5 million open positions on a global scale. That is, an incredible number. There is 0% unemployment. If you want to work in cybersecurity, you can find an opportunity in it. That's the good news. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough people seeking those opportunities. And our colleges and universities are working very diligently, and we are doing our best to assist them in that effort. But unfortunately, they just can't crank students out fast enough to fill all of those open roles. And when they do come out, we'll talk about this a little bit later. They may have some of the skills, but need additional skills that we can help augment with. So hopefully that kind of gives a beginning. I know we're going to talk about this more as we go through, but I'll turn it over to Shannon and she'll add more commentary.
Thanks, Joe. So when I think of your question, why cybersecurity, I'm going to come from more of an everyday practical standpoint. Um, Joe, he talked about the business aspect of it. I'm going to talk about the everyday life. Everything that we do touches cybersecurity. Every single aspect of our life. Everything is online now. Everything is digital. No one is really, going inside, banks as much as they used to do. Everything is online. Even the instructions from elementary school on up. I think about my daughter. I have a teenage daughter. She does not know a world without technology. And so for me, it's more personal because I want her to understand that you have to be secure in the things that you do. And that encompasses, her being able to navigate online in a secure way. That is also, social media platforms, just anything, any kind of banking, shopping, everything that we do touches a form of cybersecurity. So for me, it's more personal because I have a daughter who does not know anything other than the technology age that we now live in. So that's why, it's an important field for me.
And if it's okay, I wouldn't mind adding just a little bit of additional color. We're Joe mentioned the shortage of resources and whatnot, and so we've kind of taken that seriously. And so we find ourselves, working with organizations on workforce development programs, getting involved with higher education, finding ourselves on advisory boards so that we can, coach and guide and identify maybe where the gaps are and how we can improve some of those programs. So not only is Solutions Cubed as a company trying to be proactive in helping, kind of close that gap, that workforce gap, but we're proactively, being involved in these advisory commissions or advisory boards that are making decisions on, what their cybersecurity program is going to look like, what their continuing education program is going to be looking like, what their cybersecurity certificate programs are going to be looking like, and I know we'll talk about internships and whatnot later, but we've tried to be very proactive in getting that knowledge out there and kind of spreading the word.
I actually have a question for you guys. And something that I always think about is education. How can we reform education? Because I feel like the universities have sometimes lose touch with the workforce.
Mhm.
Is there any chance or is there any way for us to look at a specialized version of IT, like cybersecurity, as a vocation and treat it like a vocation instead of a degree?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yes. So, first, first thing I would suggest is rethinking the way that we consider what cybersecurity is. It is not an information technology field.
Okay.
Cybersecurity, it encompasses your whole business, a whole company, everything that we do in life is cybersecurity right now because we're technology driven. And
Mhm.
so I think one of the misconceptions is that cybersecurity is some tool, some trick, something cool that we teach kids in school to do, and that's not it. And that's why we continue to fail. We've seen it over and over again. That's why businesses keep getting breached. That's why we keep succumbing to all of these threats that are out here because of the way that we view cybersecurity. Cybersecurity in a holistic way affects everything that we do. And until we can change the way that we think about what it is, then we're going to continue to fail. We're going to continue to fail teaching it in universities and schools. It doesn't matter if it's a vocation or not. If we don't have that right mindset of what it actually is and how it affects every single thing that we do, then it's still going to fail. That's just my opinion. And so one thing that I can say that I do see some universities, when you were just speaking of about universities being out of touch or some schools being out of touch with what it actually is. One thing that I can say about Regent University, which is where my alma mater, is that most of the professors they are currently in the workforce. They're currently in the cybersecurity field. So they don't have professors that are not actively working in that field. So it makes it more relevant for the students there. I can't speak for all universities, but I can speak for Regent University in saying that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, again, if we can stop thinking about cybersecurity as this cool bolt on to something that we do and think about it as this is something that needs to be in like integrated into our everyday living, into all of our business aspects, whether it's the financial, whether it's the information technology aspect, whether it's the way that we do business as a whole, it has to touch every single thing that we do in order for it to be completely effective. And so until we do that, we're just going to continue to lose in this cybersecurity war that is happening right now.
Now, moving to from businesses, sorry, to education, what you were talking about, and then just moving to businesses. The question is, what are the most common threats businesses face when it comes to cybersecurity? Who wants
Well,
to address it?
yeah. So I'll jump in and go first, and then I'll turn it over to Mike and to Shannon. So it doesn't get talked about as much as it did 5 years ago, but ransomware and ransomware attacks are still a tremendous threat to organizations. So, for anyone who isn't overtly familiar, ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts the victim's data, making it inaccessible until a ransomware is paid, and that ransomware is typically paid off, usually in cryptocurrency. So it's an economic crime, right? It can be high tech or low tech. We see more often now low tech ransomware. What's a low tech ransomware crime? Well, I send you an email. The email's got a link in it. That link is malware. It a ransomware threat, and you click on that link, and you begin infecting systems on your network, right? So huge problem. We are up over 2 million with an M, $2 million per ransomware attack. Just 2017, the average size of a ransomware attack was $17,000. It is now $2.73 million, and we're only about 7 years later. So that's one huge area. I think another one is, we continue to be victimized by the one application that every single person uses. Think about that. What application does every single person use? We all use email, right? So phishing is a form, it's a term of social engineering where the attacker tricks the users into revealing sensitive information, or, as I mentioned earlier, installing malicious software. So that's another tremendous area that organizations are still grappling with and still dealing with. And there's no easy solution because no one's getting rid of email anytime soon. You can certainly lessen the use of it by using other tools like chat and texting and tools like Slack and others and Teams, etc. But the bottom line is email's not going away anytime soon. And this notion of business email compromise, right? Impersonation of executives, deep fakes, forcing suppliers or tricking organizations into transferring large sums of money continues to be a growing and pervasive problem. And then the last one that I'll talk about for now is supply chain attacks. So we see this time and time again. It's not me, it's you, it's my provider, it's somebody who provides me services and provides services to our customers. I certainly don't want to malign any organization, but the SolarWinds attack was a high-profile example of a supply chain attack where the attacker injected malicious code into a SolarWinds software update, and we know what happened there, and we know what the impact has been on SolarWinds. So so those are three of the more prevalent ones that continue to see meteoric growth. But I'll stop there and open it up to Mike and to Shannon and see if there's anything they'd like to add to those three.
I think they might be a little muted.
Mike, I think you're on mute.
We can hear you, but we can hear you, Mike. Do you want to address something else of what
Yes.
Joe says?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry about that. So
Go
yeah,
ahead.
so Joe focused, for the attacks from the outside in. I'd like to take it from the inside out. So lots of things can happen to attack a company, but there's a lot of things that go on inside the company that the company has control over, and often either discount, don't take seriously, or just don't educate or train. So one of the threats that I think face a lot of organizations is this misperception that if they pass their compliance audit, they're secure. That's a huge threat. It's a huge misunderstanding, because just because you pass an audit, it has nothing to do with security. It has to do with your processes and procedures. Are you following them? Are you doing them? And the way a lot of these audits work, it's basically establishing what's the bare minimum. It's kind of like, taking a course and saying, look, you pass with a 60. As soon as you get a 60, you're done, right? Well, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm taking a course or I'm taking a test, I kind of want to know what I got on it, right? If I got a 60, I know there's a lot of room to improve, but I still passed. So it's like taking that course, it's a, pass fail. But if I get a 98, I know I'm doing really well, right? So a lot of organizations, they're passing their audit because it's the bare minimum, but they don't put themselves into this continual improvement cycle. How do I get better? How do I take the 60 and get it to a 65? How do I take the 65, get to a 70, to an 80, to a 90? And so a lot of organizations are shocked when they're breached, and they say, wait a minute, I passed my audit. Well, yeah, of course, but how low did you score? And they can't even answer that question because they're not given that information. You kind of passed or you didn't. So I think that's one important thing. They don't have a continual improvement program in place to continually get better at what they do. The other thing is, a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses don't realize the target that's on their back. So, we talk to a lot of smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard, we don't have anything of value. They don't want us. We don't play with the big boys, that kind of thing. And I always ask a couple of questions. And first off, I'll state before I tell you the question or whatever it is, every business has value. If they didn't, they wouldn't be in business. Every business today has digital value. And if they have digital value, that is up for grabs, right? Because the bad actor wants anything that you place value on. That's what they want. Then they're going to either take it or they're going to prevent you from using it, right? So here's the question I always ask a small business that is thinking, that I don't have anything that they want. I'll always ask them, how many times over the last 12 years, 10, 12 years, have you heard our politicians say, we're going to rebuild the economy on the backs of small businesses? And how many times have you heard politicians say, there are countries out there that don't like us very much? Now, they don't say the next part of this, but this is what we say. They will never take us on militarily. And I'm talking about the U.S. specifically. They wouldn't take us on militarily, but they'll take us on in cyber warfare. So where do you think these businesses are placing themselves, right? So they are in the critical supply chain, and they are in the area of helping the economy, and they are severely understaffed, severely underfunded, and severely lacking in the understanding of the weapons they have available. And even if they know what they are, they don't know how to use them. So that really puts a lot of our economy in jeopardy through the small businesses. The other thing that can really help and is shown significantly to help smaller organizations is awareness training, regular awareness training. And even if they have awareness training, a lot of times it's, once or twice a year, blah, blah, blah. But what's a strong awareness training program that they can continually grow with, mature with, educate? So a lot of the, the research that has been done that's followed up is, starting as ground zero, 80% of small businesses, and the number used to be 60%. 80% of small businesses that are breached go out of business within 6 months, and we're not taking the minimal effort to train our people on how to recognize, avoid, and prevent, those kinds of things. And lastly, and I'll turn it over to Shannon, is most small businesses, especially, don't have an incident response plan. They don't know how to respond if they are breached. And usually the way they respond totally avoids being able to recover, prosecute, understand what really is happening. So just the simple thing of adding a good, strong cybersecurity awareness training program and developing an incident response plan so people know, the organization knows how to respond when a breach happens, it could have a huge impact on our businesses.
So, Mike, I love what you said.
I do too, actually. Thank you for sharing that.
But when you look at a small business,
Yeah.
their number one focus is, especially a smaller, newer business that you said it has a value. Their focus is so much on growing and growing and growing. A lot of times they forget about something like this, or they don't prioritize something like this.
Yep.
Now, I know where you guys are coming from, and you're like, what are you, crazy? You got to think about this. But for them, just kind of staying alive, just trying to grow a little bit more than last year. What do you say to a company like that who is clearly ignoring cybersecurity. They're probably going to get hit. It's not a matter of if, it's a when. How do you tell them, hey guys, you need to cover your back, otherwise you're not going to be in business?
Do you want the simple answer? Here we go. Survival's not guaranteed.
Sure.
So the fight that they're in to survive, they're thinking of survival as only one aspect, and that's cash flow. And you're talking to a small business. We're a small business. I deal with that every day, every week, right? Cash flow is critical, and sometimes it's not fully there or whatnot. But when we talk about survival, it's not just surviving based on revenue coming in. It's surviving an attack, surviving the circumstances that we're in. So that's kind of the path I go down. Now, let me share with you what the typical response is. I get that. I get it. It's just that right now, we're just not in a position to do that.
Right.
Now, fast forward 2 months, 3 months later, all those things we were talking about, then you get the call on a Friday night. We've been breached. We've been hacked. I don't care what it costs. We got to get back. That's the difference. In the beginning, when they don't think they're a target, or they're thinking about, the financials of it, they can find reasons to put it off. But when they're breached, they'll spend whatever it takes. And typically the preventative is far less than the repair.
It's cheaper to have your medicine than it is to have surgery.
And you go and you buy, car insurance because of the accident that may happen. You have life insurance because of the accident, or the inevitable may happen. This is no longer an optional thing. It's inevitable, every business. So it's got to be part of, and I'm just going to call it, maybe we coined this, Zia. It's part of the survival plan. It's got to be part of the survival plan.
I like, and you brought up something when you said when they get breached. And a lot of these companies now, they'll have cybersecurity insurance. Now, this might be a way to kind of play, because I'm deep down inside, I'm a sales guy. So I'm always thinking about how can I make it so it's in their best interest to do this? Hopefully I'm right on this assumption, but I know you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a solid cybersecurity infrastructure built in, would your cybersecurity insurance cost you less on a monthly basis?
So I'm gonna ask Joe to chime in here too, but I'm gonna get the conversation started. Every time there's a breach, and I'm gonna go back, let's go back 10 years. Every time there was a breach, and I'm not picking on the insurance industry, both of my brothers were in it for a long time. Every time there was a breach, the insurance companies were excited because their sales in cybersecurity insurance went up, significantly up. Well, what's happened now, and Joe alluded to it earlier, things have gotten so expensive that it was starting to put a lot of companies out of business. So they had guaranteed, they had insurance to pay out, but the payouts were getting more and more and more. So now insurance companies are doing evaluations on businesses. And if you're not scoring at a certain level, you're not getting insurance. And they'll say, yes, we're happy to insure you, but you have got to tighten up the ship a bit. And there are applications out there and scorecards that they'll use to say, you don't get this up from a D- to a B+. We're not even going to have the conversation. Secondly, the important thing is not all insurance policies are the same. And you have a lot of insurers saying that you have cybersecurity insurance. And I encourage all of your listeners to find out what that means, because they are not all the same. And a lot of times they're finding out after the breach that they don't have the coverage they thought they had. Joe, Shannon, you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
So actually, hold on. Before we jump, I want one more follow up on what you just said, because we run into this every day. For example, we just renewed our policy for our business insurance policy. I'm looking through it. I'm like, yeah, okay, this seems fine. Most people don't even know. So how could a small business owner know what to look for in a policy that would be sufficient for their business? Not just sufficient, but how do we know what's right for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm going to let you run with that one.
Sure, thanks, Mike. So Zia, the answer is they don't, and I'll tell you the reason why. Number one, they don't understand the notion, nor do a lot of the carriers, of maximum potential loss. For example, if I walk up to most business owners and I say, hey, how many records do you have in various databases and systems and applications, whether they're SaaS based or on premises, do you have? How many of them would know the answer to that question? They don't know the answer to that question. Most big companies don't know the answer to that question. So why would a small to mid-sized business know the answer to it? But every one of those records, Zia, has a value associated to it. In the healthcare world, that record is 3 times what it is almost every place else. It's almost $500 per record. Most businesses sit between about 150 and 200 per record, right? So that's one thing. They don't have a calculation on that, and they don't really have a good way of figuring out how many assets they actually have. They also don't have a very good picture of what their risk tolerance looks like. If my risk tolerance is 3 million, but I've got 6 million in assets, well, I'm in big trouble if I get hit with ransomware or a distributed denial of service attack, because I just lost double the value that I think I can absorb and still function and operate. And Mike gave you a number earlier about how many businesses go, when they have a data breach. And I don't say the word breach lightly, right? Because that's a word that an attorney should apply, not somebody in the business unit or of the business itself. They don't have the right amount of insurance, but they don't know that they don't have the right amount. Nor can their carrier tell them, because you know what a carrier sends you when you want to apply for cyber insurance? They send you a questionnaire. It's got about 12 questions on it. It says, do you have multi-factor authentication? Do you have somebody who you call in the middle of the night if you do get attacked today? But it actually doesn't talk about things like likelihood and impact, which are the items that really drive the computation of risk in an organization. Why don't they ask for those things? Well, because they know they'd be wasting their time, because most people can't answer the likelihood and impact questions, or they might struggle with them. So they get back these answers to these questionnaire questions, and they take them literally, but they tell the client, listen, you've got a life and PNC policy with us. We'll give you, a couple of points discount on what your premium's going to be. But if you lied on this questionnaire and we figure out that you lied, you're in big trouble. We're going to drop you, and we're going to cut you off. There's many fallacies that exist. By the way, only about 33% of everyone who applies for cyber insurance ever puts in a claim on it, right? But in the meantime, you hear these lofty numbers about the number of data breaches that happen. You would think that number would be higher. There's many organizations who, don't even really understand the nature of when to file a claim and what to file it on, let alone understanding limits, sub-limits, premiums, and the way, premiums can go up and down depending upon the nature of your cybersecurity program. So, to answer your question, I always tell people cyber insurance is an after the fact protection, right? The boom, we call it, right of boom planning. You'll hear Mike use that term often. The boom is when the attack successfully happens against your organization. What do you do next? Well, you call your incident response company, you call your attorney, you call your cyber insurance company. We're big believers in, let's see what we can do to the left of boom, right? We want to help you before the attack happens. We understand you've got protections in place after the attack happens. So, Shannon, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you surmised that one really well, Joe.
Sure.
Thank you so much, guys. You want to continue?
I have one more. I have one for Shannon because
One more, because we have 6 questions, and I want to
I'll
hear
make
Shannon
this
with
one quick.
internship.
So this one kind of got me a little bit. So I'm big into the stock market. I love watching rate of return. Everything I'm invested in is not even close to the rate of return if I had just figured out how to be a hacker like 15 years ago. Because you're telling me it went from 17,000 to over $2 million in the course of like 5 or 10 years. There's got to be something to that, right? So now we see like the importance of it, and you see companies are willing to pay. Why wouldn't somebody just become a hacker? It seems like you could get rich overnight. Unless, Mike, unless you guys are defending that company, of course.
Well, that's right. That's right. Make sure you pass that word around. Well, I was going to say, Zia, we have to be careful about what we say, because now you've triggered the FBI is going to be following you to see what your activities are. Change of career for Zia.
If they knew how bad I was with tech, they would just giggle. Don't worry.
So what was the question again?
It's back in the day when we had the stock market crash, they appointed Joe Kennedy to run and fix the stock market problem because he manipulated it and made so much money through it.
Yeah.
Do we have any intentions? Are we doing anything like this where we take previous hackers and help them build defense systems to overcome what they're doing? And then if they are you guys doing anything like that, or how does that work? Because that could be interesting.
Yeah, let me paint a picture based on what you shared before, because you triggered something. Think about why is it so profitable? Why wouldn't it just become a hacker? Think about a lot of these. I'm just going to take outside international hackers, nation state actors, they would be referred to. So think about third world countries, and let's say that the average yearly wage is 1,000 a year, right? And even at that, that's pennies a day, right? But if you take on being a hacker, all of a sudden you've gone from the hut or a cardboard box to a beautiful office building, air conditioned, heated in the winter, amazing equipment to work on. A lot of these folks, this is just my opinion, right? Nothing formal. A lot of these people are probably not bad people. It's their job, and they've been given an opportunity to make a living for themselves that far outweighs or outperforms what the majority of people in that nation state are making. And so now it becomes very attractive to them to do this. And as far as they're concerned, they're just doing their job. They're just doing their job, and they're getting paid a good dollar for doing it. And so the real threat, going back to the threat discussion, the real threat is with AI. And I'm people often ask, is AI good, is it bad, whatever. And I always say that anything in the hands of a good person is good. AI in the hands of good people will produce good things, and AI in the hands of evil people will produce evil things. The issue with AI that I see, or the threat with AI that I see, is that your average low-level hacker has now become a master hacker. And so now the threat prevention and the effort in threat prevention has become exponentially more difficult, and more attack vectors and coming from multiple places. So I don't know if I thoroughly answered your question, but that's kind of what really triggered it for me here.
Z, I'll just quickly add, and then we'll throw it back to Alea. Today's cyber criminal looks more like somebody who sits in corporate America than most people in corporate America do. They get performance reviews. They can get cash advances. They take vacations with their family. They are, very proficient at their jobs. They work long hours, like many of us do. So you ask a legitimate question. Warren Buffett said a number of years ago, the number one problem with mankind is cybersecurity, right? Because we've made it all too attractive and too hard to penalize the culprits, right? So the instantiators of it, they're not, it's not the kid in the hoodie sitting in their basement anymore, right? They're sitting in professional office buildings in some other segment of the world, getting paid a lot of money to do what they do. Very often, a percentage of what they bring in. Much like a sales compensation model might work in particular. So we definitely have a challenge, and I think we're doing some things to respond to that challenge. One of them is we're taking much more of an offensive approach to cyber, less of a defensive. Not that we don't take a defensive approach, but adding more offense to our arsenal, right? So we're trying to meet them where they live on their grounds, as opposed to allowing them to come here and attack our people, and our, Shannon mentioned, people on a personal level and their responsibility, and what they need to do from a cyber standpoint, as well as corporations and businesses. So hopefully that helps. I'm sure more will come into play as we get through the balance of our session today.
And I'm not speaking from any official standpoint, but I can guarantee you that as really sophisticated hackers are caught, apprehended, whatever you want to call it, part of the plea deal is to help and assist.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest issue is we don't have international law on cybersecurity. So things that are happening outside of, the bounds of the US, let's say, we have no jurisdiction in other countries or whatever. So cyber law is a really, really tricky thing. But
Yeah.
but certainly, what was that TV show? The guy that was doing a lot of the financial fraud.
Read
No,
American Read.
it wasn't greed. It was more recent. But anyway, he was hired to help them understand how people deal in
White
business
collar.
white collar. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great example. We know it's happening.
Yep.
We're just it's not really advertised.
But by the way, our lack of understanding of international law also comes into play, as Mike just mentioned. So in Russia, for example, it's not illegal. It's not illegal to hack outside the country. It's only illegal to hack inside the country. So if you're sitting there and you're hacking some other part of the world, you are not breaking any laws inside the country. So these are the things that we don't think about, or don't really know that impact us in a pretty material way.
So I'll tie it all together back to the question, Aleha, that you asked earlier. What is one of the biggest threats? Biggest threats is people. It's the biggest
Exactly.
threats that companies face
Yeah.
is the people. Whether it's the people outside of the organization or inside of the organization. But to bring it back to what Mike was saying earlier, um, those threats, those insider threats, it's not like people go to work. Well, some do. They try to take vengeance on being fired or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, it's unintentional because they're unaware. They just don't know what they don't know. So that lack of training, that lack of awareness, that lack of just understanding cybersecurity as a whole is going to always be the biggest threat. That's why hackers are going to always make money, because there are people who are unaware, who are not trained, who don't understand. Um, and so I really hope, Zia, that you don't become a hacker. I don't want you to quit your day job and do that. But in the event you
We'll
do,
keep an eye on
this
him.
exactly. In the event that you do, this is our message for everyone. People,
Mm.
it's the people. They are the biggest threats. The not knowing, the unknown, the unaware, the lack of being trained, the lack of organizations taking it seriously, like Mike said earlier, because they don't even think that they have value. Why would anyone want to hack us? What do we have to offer? Which is like he said, if you have something of value to you, it's going to be of value to someone else. So biggest threat will
Wonderful.
always be
Yep.
people, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, guys. And Shannon, I have an important questions for you. And I think we need to continue the conversation with AI and cybersecurity, and we need to have another meeting with you guys because we have a lot of topics to talk about. But Shannon, I want to talk about, and I want to ask you something specifically, and it's about uh, what specific skills do your internship programs focus on developing to prepare students for real-world cybersecurity challenges? And what would be an advice you will give to someone actually considering a switch of career to cybersecurity? And then after this, we have like 8 questions I want to go move forward. But Shannon, let's go ahead with you.
Thank you. Well, both of those questions actually speak to me personally because I did an internship and I was a student, but also I switched careers. I had a career before I switched into cybersecurity. So both of those are very, relevant to me. I will say this. I'll start with the advice to anyone who's thinking about switching to a career in cybersecurity. Don't do it. Don't do it unless you're committed to being a lifelong learner, unless you've done your research, unless you have a greater meaning or a greater purpose for doing it outside of just the financial gain, because a lot of times we let money drive our decisions. And my grandmother, and I quote her all the time, Joe and Mike's, they laugh at me, but my grandmother used to say that all money isn't good money, right? So you can't let that be the determining factor of why you go into a specific career. It has to mean something to you at the end of the day, because if it does, then you'll stay committed to it. And so for anyone that's looking to get into the cybersecurity field, I would say do your research. What is it about the cybersecurity field that is attractive to you? If it's just money, that's the wrong reason. That's the wrong reason. I'm telling you, that is the wrong reason. You'll be miserable because it is demanding. It forces you to continuously learn. It changes every day. Um, but if these qualities are some things that you like, that you are excited about, if you want to be a difference maker, then I would say yes, go into cybersecurity and just figure out what that looks like for you and what that means for you. But if it's for any of those reasons that I said before, I would just say don't do it. And I'm very realistic and honest in that way. Because I have friends and family members that come up to me all the time. I want to do cybersecurity. My first question is why? Why do you want to do cybersecurity? Because you saw a commercial? Because you saw someone advertising a boot camp that says, yeah, you could be a cybersecurity professional in 6 weeks and make over $100,000. And that's why a lot of people are interested in it. But that is the wrong reason to get into this field. So that's that question. Our internship program, it means a lot to me because one of the challenges that students have coming out of cybersecurity programs, whether it's a 4-year program, 2-year program, apprenticeship, even a graduate program. One of the challenges that they have is that they get out, they have this degree, and they can't get a job. And Joe talked about all of the millions of positions that are open, but there are hundreds of thousands of graduates that come out of school that can't land a job. Why is that? And I feel like that's because there is a huge gap. Getting in this field does not just require for you to have a specific education or certifications, which we also put a lot of emphasis on, but you have to have experience as well. And so the reason why I love what we're doing in our internship program is because while we have students that are getting those degrees, we're helping them to gain the experience along the way, and they're coming out with certifications as well. Um, One of the things that we heard just from talking to a lot of students from different programs is that they learn a lot about the technology side of cybersecurity in college, right? They learn how to become pen testers. They learn about hacking. They learn about, vulnerability assessments. They learn about the latest tools, but they don't really understand the why behind the what. They don't understand why. Why are these things important? Why is it important, to understand that cybersecurity touches every aspect of a business? So in essence, what our program does is it teaches them the business aspect of cybersecurity as well. It teaches them the the why behind the what. It teaches them, well, why are these things important? It teaches them about the different frameworks and how to keep your organization safe. It teaches them about the culture of an organization as a whole, which is so huge. It's so important. If your company as a whole is not thinking about cybersecurity, if you don't have a cybersecurity culture, um, awareness training, and all of these things, then how successful can you be? So we're trying to give them those tools that they're going to need going into the workforce, not just for how the workforce is, but the future of it. Because again, one of the things that we said earlier is that we're losing in this battle against all of these threats. Why? Because of the way that we think about cybersecurity, right? So we're trying to give them a holistic view of what it is, and then we're giving them the experience. So part of what we do is we're teaching them how to incorporate the controls from the different frameworks, whether it's the NIST CSF framework, the 800-171 framework, the 853 framework. We're teaching them how to utilize those, how to implement those, and then they use those on us. They assess us as a company. We allow them to do a mock assessment against us as a company. And then at the end of their internship, they're doing that for a live client. So they're learning how to think of cybersecurity holistically and not just let me use a tool. And we're even expanding our program to do even more things and to expand it to incorporate more pathways. But the main thing that we wanted to do was teach them the why behind the what. Because if you don't even understand why you're doing it, then what you're doing is not even it's gonna be null and void ultimately, if that makes any
Wonderful.
sense.
That's awesome, and that's wonderful. And obviously, we want to encourage everybody, especially from education, who are looking for this switching careers and everything, to to go to your website. I'm going to show your website too, to see what you guys are doing and everything, of course. And thank you so much for sharing that. We have a lot of questions, and I want to go to over those with Gabby. So Gabby, go ahead and let's just ask the guys
We have
the
a lot of
truth.
questions. I don't know if we have the time, but okay, let's start. We have here one. What initial steps can a small business take to enhance its cybersecurity practices?
I'll jump in there. Um, so we're very tied in with the here in the U.S. the Department of Homeland Security, the CISA arm, CISA CISA Cybersecurity Information Infrastructure Security Agency.
Mhm.
They have a package called the Cybersecurity Essentials. 6 key areas that every business, no matter the size, should implement and do as an organization to bring that first level of baseline security. So that would be my first step. Uh, the UK has a similar version, so they have their own cybersecurity essentials, and it's very similar to the one that the U.S. has. But that's a great starting point. And then I would say, looking for an organization like ours that can help them understand what that package is all about or how to go about implementing those kinds of things. Then from there, we usually take it to, a higher level based on the size of the organization. But I would say at a bare minimum, if not going down that path, I would say getting started with a cybersecurity awareness training program. Every organization can do that. Uh, I've heard it said, well, that's expensive. That's expensive. It's less than for a year per person. It's less than going out to lunch. As a manager, if I took one of my team members out for lunch and I spent 20 or 25 US dollars on that lunch, I would do that, right? For that 20 or 25 US dollars, I get an entire year subscription for that person for awareness training, tips and tricks, newsletters, phishing simulations, that is such a phenomenal investment a small business, any business can make in their people.
When they get to the right size, and if you're still too scared to spend the money with us, we can offer you a fractional CIO, CSO, to where they can work for you part time to help you make sure you've got that process in place. Just maybe somebody to PM everything Mike's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You can reach out to a company like ours and we can get you a fractional. Somebody that's only going to, maybe they're not going to be full time, won't cost you as much. It costs you 25% of what a normal one would cost.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great step in the right direction. And as you grow, that fraction grows as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just add, the Gabby, the key tips in addition to what Mike said and what Zia had added is know your assets, know what it is you're protecting, know what your crown, they call them crown jewels, right? The crown jewels are the assets in your organization. It could be an application, could be data, could be a database, could be a system, a server, could be a cloud environment. But from a digital standpoint, know what drives your organization. And if you lost that, if that went away, what would happen to your business, right? And separate that, protect. No one protects every asset the same way. A lot of us probably have assets at home that we take additional steps to protect. We have a safe, we hide them. We put in, a specific alarm system to protect some of those things. We put in cameras, right? Do the same things in your business. Understand what is most valuable to you, and then extend additional protections to that. Most organizations don't do that. And then the other thing is, have some rules to live by. Have software rules, have hardware rules. Configure things securely. Focus on updates and patching. Do all the foundational items. That's what crushes most organizations from a cyber standpoint. They don't do the basics well, the fundamentals. Everybody wants to talk about AI and intrusion prevention and things. And those things are important, but do all the basic stuff well. When people ask me, give me something real quick, I'm like, five letters, LLDOS, layer, limit, diverse, meaning don't rely on one technology. Obfuscate, that just is a fancy word for encrypting your own information. And simplify, write policies in plain language that people can understand. Do those 5 things, you'll be in much better shape.
All right, so I'm going to say this for the ladies because they've been texting me on the side. They still have a bunch of questions they want to get through, and they asked us to do a rapid fire for the next couple of questions, if that's okay, because they don't want to run out of time. They don't want to disappoint the audience.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Hit it.
Next question. What are the most common cybersecurity mistakes new employees make, and how can they avoid them?
Who's
I
going?
can tell you that.
One to answer.
One of the most common mistakes, we talked about it earlier, and that's just clicking on links, clicking on stuff, just not paying attention, not knowing what looks normal and what doesn't look normal, just giving out information that they shouldn't have. We used a scenario before where someone that would be suspicious of an email, instead of just deleting it or reporting it, they'll forward that same email to like 10 other people and say, hey, take a look at this. What do you guys think about this? And now you've just opened it up to more people. And so I think that that's something, especially without a strong security and awareness training program, that is a common mistake that new employees will make.
Joe, you grab the next one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Next?
Yep.
Are you okay? What can the recruitment companies do to ensure that the data collected in their platforms is not being collected from other unscrupulous businesses?
I'm sorry, Gabby. Your voice trailed off, or there was some noise in the background. Can you just repeat that for me?
Yeah, obviously. What can the recruitment companies do to ensure that the data collected in their platforms is not being collected from other unscrupulous businesses?
Yeah, certainly. I think a couple of things. Look, we talk about identity-based attacks all of the time. So really key. There's some concepts there around role-based access, right? Again, don't not use multi-factor authentication. Do things to authenticate sources that you are either getting information from or ensure that you are sending to the right sources. Oh, we lost Gabby there for a second. Don't rely solely on, oh, there you are. Do something called conditional access. Conditional access means I'm supposed to receive something from somebody during a particular time of day, every day. If I don't get it during that time of day, I'm going to call that person and find out where it is. I'm not just going to assume they're going to send it to me later on because perhaps that's not what was supposed to happen at that point in time. So hopefully those things help a bit.
I know Shannon mentioned this before, but again, for students interested in cybersecurity, what are some essential skills they should focus on developing right now?
I'm gonna throw out real quick. There's not enough training or education that's happening in the governance area, the compliance area, risk management. As Shannon mentioned, there's a lot of technology training, a lot of tool training, but understanding why they're doing it. If you teach somebody the tool, they can understand how to configure and utilize that tool. But when you start to get into the requirements of those controls, those compliance controls, you really understand why you're doing it, and it will help the implementation a lot better. That's where a large shortage is in people who understand risk and compliance.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, and I don't know, Aleja, tell me you if this one is the last one or we can have more time.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think we can do the last one and then we can say thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can companies create a culture of cybersecurity awareness among their staff, even if they don't have a dedicated IT team? Who wants to answer?
Yeah, so I'll just throw a quick one out there. You don't need a dedicated. It's not about dedicated IT teams, right? It's about having somebody who understands cybersecurity well enough to explain it to staff when they come on board. Write clear policies. Have, Zia mentioned, the fractional nature of having somebody at the head of your cybersecurity program. Have somebody like that. You can contract for a person like myself, and I'll come in and explain it to your people, right? Or they can come to me with questions. So that's not an unusual thing. So it's not about IT. It's about understanding people, processes, and a little bit about technology, and having somebody explain that to folks.
I'm going to chime in really, really quickly. I know we're tight on time. So Solutions Cubed is very involved with the DVMS Institute. That's the Digital Value Management System and their institute. We kind of answering a question that came up earlier about how can I get that kind of skills without going through a degree program or whatnot. That's a great place to start. They're literally building a curriculum. 4 books out now, 8 more being developed. But the reason that I bring it up is this particular question. They're really teaching organizations how to operationalize those controls. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. another idea popped in my head, but there's more information you can get there, and it will really help. Oh, I know what I wanted to share. So we're actually developing a program soon to be announced where we understand that small companies can't necessarily train all their people or necessarily don't have the technical chops to handle it themselves. So we're creating a 1-week program where they would go through that training for 1 week. not to be the implementers, not to be the designers, not to be the experts, but to be the one individual in the small company that can sit at the table with the CEO of the company, with the managed service provider, and be there to, answer the questions, and in most cases ask the right questions, right? So the managed service provider may or may not have the cyber chops or the understanding of compliance. But if we can equip one person within that small company to know what questions to ask, or to address when the managed service provider says, don't worry about it, you don't need that. They can say, wait a minute, we do need that. So if anyone wants any additional information on that, any of your listeners, reach out to us. That's going to be a very strong program for small businesses that they just want somebody on the staff to know what questions to ask.
Guys, thank you so much for joining today. What a great conversation. We had a lot of questions, and if you got questions that were answered, you can just go ahead to our live stream chat and leave them there, and we'll make sure to get answered. Please follow also Solutions Q under LinkedIn, on their website. We are also having more webinars coming soon. Don't forget to follow us. We are at CTI Staffing on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you so much for that insightful conversation, guys. And I look forward to have you on our more coming webinars talking about AI. Yeah, that we need to invite you again, but talk about AI and all the things that we have to do with cybersecurity. Thank you for joining, guys. Thank you to all the people who leave their messages, their questions. Stay tuned. We have more webinars coming soon. And thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye, guys. It
you.
was a pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks so much.